Hello and welcome back to Trigger Smart. I'm here with Jacques at Inner 10. And in light of the British Columbia shooting today, we kind of want to just kind of talk about the issue with mass shootings. And they call them mass shootings, but sometimes there's three people, sometimes there's 10 or more. But they've happened in Australia, in Canada, obviously the United States. A common misconception is that because we're in the US and there's so many guns here and we have the Second Amendment, that we're the issue. But
Right.
clearly, we're seeing this now in Australia, which has pretty strict gun control, and in Canada, who tries to have strict gun control. So the gun laws aren't working.
Right. It's not the guns. We know that. Yeah.
Well, so for this particular case, we have over 25 people shot, 10 confirmed. Now, obviously, we know if I don't know what kind of weapon it was, it doesn't really say. But if this was an AR-15, for example, you have a 30-round magazine. So one magazine could have been enough to cause this damage.
Right.
But, and obviously, it's terrible, any loss of life. Condolences go out to the family and that kind of stuff as well. But just talking about this because it's such a big issue, we're looking at 25 shot, 10 confirmed dead. That includes the shooter. It is Jesse Strang, a 17-year-old pretending to be different sex than born. Now, these aren't my words. This is in a post on X. Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. School shooting that killed 10 people, 9 victims plus a shooter by self-unaliving, and injured 25. Around 2023, it's evident from social media, including YouTube, that this person was starting to transition. They're starting to change their mentality from being male to female. And apparently also possibly some hormone changes and things like that with medicine. And this is now, I believe officially, Canada's deadliest mass shooting. So people are going to jump on this and say it's because they're transgender. I disagree. I think it's a much bigger issue.
Right.
So mental health is an issue in society just in general. Some of it can be because of malnutrition. We eat highly processed food. We're exposed to chemicals in our environment, all that kind of stuff. And that changes a lot of things. But there's like the home environment, right? So how do you think that parents can help avoid situations like this?
I think the biggest thing is communicating with your children. Just simple conversations about the day, how the day is going. Any issues at school, any issues with your friends. Talk about what they're looking at on the internet. Talk about what their games they're playing. What sources of information they're getting their entertainment from. What kind of forums they're on. I think those are really big things to look into because I think that's been kind of the norm of society has been kind of blaming the internet, blaming video games for the violence. But what is radicalizing these kids to act this way? What is making them believe that that's an acceptable thing to do, or that should be their source to go to solve everything? What is causing this? That's really what we need to get our eyes on and understand. And just leaving your kids to roam the internet and do whatever they want, I think it's a huge risk. There's so many sources of radicalization out there, and it's dangerous.
And I agree. And I think, too, one thing that people don't really think about is, like, if you have Apple, for example, like I have an Apple ecosystem with my kids, and we have parental controls on. Those parental controls don't catch everything.
Mhm.
Same with Google, same with Ace VR, the MetaQuest. There's a system in there that basically prevents, certain age games and things like that. But a huge game that a lot of you parents should be watching out for is Gorilla Tag. So in Gorilla Tag, it's the most popular, like, I guess, virtual headset game that there is out there. And it's basically they're running around as monkeys that look like demons, by the way. They're running around with these monkeys, no legs, and they're free to talk to anyone. So if there's 100 kids in there, they have 100 different kids saying things in their ear. And those kids could be adults. They can be people that are trying to groom and manipulate them. And people have met up. Like, kids have met up with adults from there and things like that. So there's that piece of it. And then, like the Discord servers you're saying, that's also a commonality in the Charlie Kirk case, because Tyler Robinson supposedly was in a group chat in Discord with some very, very radicalized extremist type people. And they may have influenced in that direction. So I think we're in a situation where the external resources and the external influences are now having more of an effect than the parents, especially because the parents are less engaged than they used to be.
Right.
Because what do most parents do when the kids get home? Hey, how was your school day?
Yeah.
Not really caring, right? How was your school day? All right. And then the kids go pick up their electronics,
Yeah.
sit down their homework, and they play games and watch TV the rest of the night.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, besides like what you said, be involved, hug your kids, the obvious things that parents don't really do anymore. But even in cases where kids are getting the love they need and the guidance they need, that's not to say that their friend or some other influence isn't pushing them towards a direction like this shooter, because then you run into situations like this Tumbler, Ridge, British Columbia issue with this kid, where it's very clear from his pictures on social media that he was going down a certain path. Were his parents aware of that? And at what point did they step in to help?
Right.
So if you have a kid who's going down that kind of path, like how do you handle that situation?
That's tough. I mean, you're dealing with mental health issues. Maybe it might even be beyond what a parent should be able to handle. You might need to seek,
true.
a therapist, psychologist, somebody that's professional in that aspect. Especially if they were going through, therapy with any kind of hormones, or they had any kind of other prescribed
Medications.
medications. Maybe they might have had a reaction to it, and may have been having further mental health episodes because of those interactions with the medical or with the drugs or with the hormones. You never know what that's going to do to your system. That could be another factor as well.
Yeah, I think we're to the point now where, if the parents don't step in and get involved, and not even just the parents, the teachers, right? We've seen, regardless of which side you're on, left or right, middle, you know, made up ones, whatever it may be, independent, no matter where you're at, they've tried to turn everyone against each other. And a lot of these people that you see doing like these shootings, and like Tyler Robinson with Charlie Kirk being the shooter, their ideology is against the other side, right? So were the people that were targeted, and obviously this information will come out as this story gets further developed. But I'm curious if this was like a political thing. Was this if he's transitioning, was this like a transgender thing? Were these kids making fun of him?
Right.
Were the adults making fun of him?
Right.
Did he not feel supported at school? So it's not just the parents at home. Obviously, that's super important. But then you have the teachers. Are the teachers doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is teaching the kids and supporting their mental health, not molding them or pushing them towards a certain ideology, which we've seen in a lot of schools, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. Now, another aspect of this is the gun. That's the big elephant in the room, right? So where did it come from? How did he get it? Who made it available to him? Where did he get ammunition? All those kind of things. So
Right.
what do you typically recommend to parents, like in the household in general, to maintain that kind of safety?
Uh, First thing would be educating everyone in the house, firearm safety, because it doesn't matter how many locks, keys, locked doors, whatever. There is always an opportunity that those are going to fail.
Yeah.
Second is then also having some sort of security for keeping the firearms locked up, whether it be a trigger lock, whether it be a biometric scan safe, whether it be an in-wall safe or a standalone safe. Anything that you can do to minimize access or slow down the access to the firearm is very important. Next would be keeping the ammunition separate. So in the event that they actually do gain
Get
access
access.
to the firearm, keeping the ammunition separate to where they can't find it or can't gain access to it would be also another valuable thing to do.
What are your thoughts on if you have a child that is starting to go a certain extreme? Because a lot of these parents, when they go back and talk to them, they'll say, well, over the last 6 months or the last year, they've been like moving in a certain direction. Like we've seen them kind of changing ideologies and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Would you recommend that those type of kids in that situation, or adults, if they're in that situation, do you recommend that they don't, like parents don't take them to go shooting and stuff and teach them about guns because of that? Or do you think it's just more of like preventing access?
I think it's more of a preventing access. I can't tell people not to do something; it's their right to do so. But if you feel that there is a risk to your society with fear of gun violence, I've as a range, I've had people request the opportunity to store the firearms here because someone in
Hmm.
their household is having a mental health issue, or
Yeah.
we've been recommended by government agencies to people that this is a safe place to store firearms. So it is an option to remove the firearms from the household if you fear that there's someone in the house that is potentially at risk. And yeah, it would be, that'd be one extreme, but I think it would be a good choice at the best. You couldn't really go wrong in that aspect, I don't think.
So the big takeaway is pay attention to your children, and not just your children, your partners, anyone that's in your life that you care about. Make sure you're paying attention to their mental health and their mental state. Keep firearms and things away from them if possible. Don't let them have access in the first place. And then obviously, we can't control what everyone does as parents, but make sure you're not teaching your kids these extremist ideologies, and vet your children's school and teachers. If you know your kids are going to, a Discord group when they're gaming, listen to some of the stuff they're saying. Be involved. You can actually look over their shoulder and see what's being texted in some cases. For example, my kids were playing Gorilla Tag, and I kept hearing what I thought was a certain word repeated over and over again because they had their headsets set up pretty loud. And I pulled the headset off my kids and put it on, and it's the N word over and over again, just in, 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 in. And I was like, what the hell is going on? It's just a kid just saying that word over and over and over again, playing Gorilla Tag.
Yeah.
So you have no idea what these kids are hearing in their ear and seeing, on the internet. But as always, Jacques, I appreciate your time. And, it's an important message, and we just want to get this out in light of things that happened. But thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.